Spydahs Web. It's Q&A time again. It's Friday after all. We have a few questions, so let's get on with it, shall we? And guess who's back? Right. What do you want? What do you want? Oh dear, come on. Mind out at road. Not a hope in hell. Come on, shift. Right, so, first question. It's a three-part question. This comes from Grawley's Lair. Thanks for the questions. If I can get to read this, I will do. Right, so this, as I say, is in three parts. I'm referring back to, I think it must have been last week's Q&A. They said, hospital radio was mentioned. What is your favourite type of music? Sounds a very simple question to answer. Not in my case. I listen to an awful lot of different genres. For example, Jones Policewoman, Lana Del Rey, Back for Lashes, Fleetwood Mac, Jethro Tull, Simon and Garfunkel, The Carpenters, Sweet, Smokey. What else would there be? Donna Summer, Japan, Ultravox, Visage, to name a few. However, my favourite genres of music, and I'm saying genres rather than genre, because there are two I like equally. And this is a broad spectrum of music we're talking about here, because my equal favourite genres of music are classical and rock. As I said, within the classical music there are subgenres. Within the rock music category there are subgenres. I'll try and make this a little bit easier to understand. Classical, I'll listen to any. It doesn't matter what it is, I will listen to any. My favourite composer is Wagner. He may not have been a terribly pleasant kind of person. I probably wouldn't have liked him if I met him, but his music is so gothic. It's basically metal. It's basically goth rock, classical. I also like Mozart, Chopin, Serenade. The Spanish one who did the, oh god, what's his name? Guitarist chappie. Terega. Is it Francisco Terega? I don't know, I can't remember his first name. But I like his music. His guitar work is superb. I also like the modern classical music. John Williams, who did the music for Star Wars, and a hell of a lot of movies. I think he's brilliant. I love Addy Amos and the choral collective that was started by Carl Jenkins. It's classical music I just love. As for rock, it started off when I was a child. I was born in 1968. My earliest memories of listening to music was listening to things like Wigwam Bam, Little Willie, Coco, Chop Chop by The Sweet. And things like You Wanna Be in My Gang, Rock and Roll, whatever, and other songs that were made by the artist that I shall never never ever mention again in a positive light. As well as I say, Simon and Garfunkel and Roy Orbison. Roy Orbison is my favourite male singer. My dad was a big fan of Roy Orbison. My parents were fans of Roy Orbison, and I just picked it up from my dad more than anything else. I think his voice is just absolutely astounding. In the late 70s, I first heard a song that made me fall in love with a particular singer, and that song was Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. She's my favourite female singer, and you've seen the cut before, but there she is again. All her album covers are one cup. Have a bit of a slurp. Now, going on to the rock part, I like anything really from, as I said, the early 70s glam rock to the heavy metal stuff that was around in the 70s. And the 80s, the hair metal genre, things like your Motley Crues and Def Leppards and your Bon Jovis and whatever, didn't appeal to me. It just didn't gel quite right with me. It was then that I moved over to the darker side of music, and I started listening to more of the gothic genre that was out at the time. I love the imagery, I love the music, I love the whole thing around gothic, the gothic scene, obviously the black, obviously the skulls, even the architecture. I know gothic architecture started out as being called gothic as an insult, but it was, it is really atmospheric. Really atmospheric kind of buildings, and I love the buildings, I love the literature, I love the the music, and I still do. I class myself as goth more than anything else, even though I listen to death metal, thrash metal sometimes, not a great thing. I like soft metal as well. I like soft rock as well. I do like Whitesnake. Iron Maiden's one of my favourite groups, but I like it more when my two favourite genres of rock and classical merge, and we get early on in the 70s groups like ELO, 70s and 80s, but more recently when the goth aspects merged with classical music, and we got the likes of Epica and Nightwish, and symphonic metal was born, and brilliant, fantastic. So I hope that answered your question. My favourite types of music, my go-to types of music are classical and rock. There's not many genres I don't like. I'm not a fan of this hippity-hoppity stuff for the bang-bang thumpy dance crap, and not a great fan of R&B, modern R&B that is. There's only two kinds of music I don't, two, possibly three types of music I really do hate. One is the high production boy band chart crap that keeps being plastered all over the place, like Westlife and Boyzone, and no. I hate that stuff. I hate reggae, and I hate Bhangra. I just don't, it doesn't, none of it appeals to me at all. But apart from that, give me some decent guitars, or strings, and a good symphony section, and I'm a happy little puppy. Next, Still with Grawley's Lure. Have you ever played the old pocket board games GV and Ogre? No, I haven't. I've seen the reissue of Ogre. It's a massive, massive box, but I've never, ever, up till the reissue, I've never heard of Ogre. So that shows why I didn't play the pocket version. And GV, apparently, I think that's something to do with Ogre as well, isn't it? I don't know, but yeah, I've not played it, and I don't know if it would be something that I would play. Just looking at it doesn't appeal to me at all. So yeah, I haven't played it at all. No. And finally, the question is tea or coffee? I'll have coffee, black, 1 sugar, please. Oh, you weren't offering, okay. No, that's my tipple of choice in the brew department is, I say coffee. I like it black, I like it strong, and I like it with 1 sugar. I also like tea, but I'm very fussy about tea. I will only make it either at home or my dad's, and I only have it if I make it. More often than not. My daughter makes me. I'll allow my daughter to make me a cup of tea, but I do like. I like more things. The teas I like things like chai and Earl Grey. Proper teas, not this. What are you doing, you? Addy, will you move? Like, move. Now, move. Oh dear. Right, so, Grawley's Lure. I hope that's answered your 3 questions adequately. The next questions come from my friend Karina Cantas, 101 Frogget on YouTube. She says, me again. So I know one of my books is your favourite, lol. But what is your second favourite book, and who is your favourite author and why? Right. Firstly, to ask what my, if I'm counting one of yours as my favourite book, my second favourite book. If you have to ask that question, you obviously don't remember how we met, how we started chatting. It was in a MSN group back in the day, early 2000s, I think it was. So 2000, 2001, something like that. We've been friends for about 14, 15 years. And the group was Lord of the Rings. And that is my favourite book. I love the whole thing about it, the whole world that Tolkien created in Middle-earth. Brilliant. The characters, the storyline, everything about it appealed to me. And then Peter Jackson went and ruined it by doing those 3 films. But oh dear. So yeah, Lord of the Rings is my favourite book. But she also says who's my favourite author and why. I don't really have a favourite author. I have Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I'm linking them both together are my favourite books. But Tolkien isn't my favourite author. Apart from your good self, Karina, I have 2 favourite authors, tied, and both of them are no longer with us. Douglas Adams and James Herbert. Douglas Adams, I like the humour. I like the silliness of his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sci-fi. It's just, as I say, it's just silliness in sliced tree form. It really do love it. I'll prefer the books to the TV series. I think the movie, they ruined it. It didn't have that same effect with Hitchhiker's Guide, but the TV series was good. The radio play was better, and the books far superior to each of them. As always with books, everything goes on in here. If it's force-fed you on a TV screen or in audio, well, even in audio form, everything is going on in here. You're hearing what's going on, but you can't picture anything. Anything that you can see happening takes it away from me. So I would always sooner hear an audio book, a radio play, that kind of thing, or read, because it's what goes on in my mind. And I have a very similar sense of humour to Douglas Adams, so it works wonders for me. The Do It Gently books I enjoyed, the Secret Detective Agency and The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul. Again, wasn't too keen on the TV series. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't. Well, it wasn't the same storyline, so I could separate that from the book anyway. So, but overall, I wasn't really keen on them. As for James Herbert's, I like horror. I like subtlety in horror. I don't, and James Herbert does it really, really well. The way he writes certain books, say the David Ash books, Haunting, The Ghosts of Sleeth, Ash, they're really, really well written. They are. They drag you in, and when they're in, they slap you about a bit. I love the fact that, specifically in those three books, the subtlety in the horror is what gets to you, rather than the actual smack you in the face with a clenched fist wrapped in barbed wire. It can do that as well. Things like the rats, Drummondger, where everything seems. Again, it's still subtle, but there's more gore with those, because you can imagine people being eaten alive by rats, and it just makes your skin crawl. You know what I mean? But there's one scene in The Ghosts of Sleeth which actually made me feel nauseous when I read it, and it was to do with these poachers that were going around, and one of them had a crossbow, and he fell down a well, I think it was, I can't remember exactly. It was great recalling. He fell down a well, and as he was falling, his crossbow was pointing up, and he accidentally pulled the trigger, and it shot up through his bottom jaw. And the way that was described, I was turning green. But it's not subtle. It's not subtle. It's very subtle. It's not in your face gore. He talks about how people are feeling when things are happening, and absolutely brilliant. The first horror book I ever read was James Herbert Survivor, and from that was when I was 13 or 14, and I've got every one of his books ever since. And again, he's along with Tolkien, along with Douglas Adams, along with David Eddings, sadly missed. And there we are. That's my favourite books and my favourite authors. And you also asked, what genre of book can you not read? Well, this wasn't actually asked in my Q&As. It was asked on one of her channels. on Facebook, but I thought I'd add this in as well because it's a question that links in with the books. I don't like reading autobiographies, biographies, and anything factual. I prefer when I'm reading something to be taken away from reality and transported into a new world, a new place, a new era, a new planet, somewhere that I know full well I will never experience, but it's just pure escapism for me. I want to be able to read things, imagine things going on in my head. And if it's something that's real and factual, I find it difficult doing that. Again, because it's actually there. I can actually look at it online and see things. But reading sci-fi, reading horror, reading fantasy, it just takes you away from everything. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be frightening, it can be funny, it can be anything you want it to be. But I don't like realistic stuff, and I'm not too keen on westerns either. I don't really like the western genre all that much. Although saying that, going back to the previous question where I was asked about music, one of my favourite goth groups of the 80s was Fields of the Nephilim. They did the old spaghetti western look to the stage attire. And I like the clothing. Don't really like the genre of movie, TV series or literature. But that's all the questions I've got for today. But I'm not finishing yet because, as you all know, today is the anniversary of the attacks on the Twin Towers, where 2,977 people lost their lives in an atrocious terrorist attack on those two buildings. It wasn't just Americans that lost their lives, there were British, Indian, people from all over the world lost their lives. And as of 2 years ago, medical authorities stated that 1,140 people who worked, lived or studied in Lower Manhattan at the time of the attack have since been diagnosed with cancer as a result of exposure to toxins at ground zero. Over 1,400 9/11 rescue workers who responded to the scene in the days and months after the attacks have since died. And what saddens me even more, 11 unborn babies also died in 9/11. Along with 2,605 US citizens, most of them civilians, were 67 people lost their lives from the UK, including British territories as well. People from the 47 people from the Dominican Republic died, 41 people from India died, and over 90 countries were affected by this. And it's one of those days where we have to sit and think of what could have been if it hadn't happened. So I just want to take this opportunity to say my thoughts and prayers are with the families of anybody who was affected by the incident, and hopefully we'll never see anything again on the same scale. But that's all from this video. As always, take care. Well, I'm not going to finish yet. As always, at the end of these videos, if you would like to ask a question, ping, my phone goes off. If you'd like to ask a question, please do so in the comments section below this video. You can ask about anything. It doesn't have to be, well, as you've heard from today's questions, it doesn't have to be about gaming, it doesn't have to be about painting, it can be about anything at all. So please feel free to ask any questions. If you don't want to ask in the comment section, my email address is in the description box. If you'd like to drop me an email, I will ask the question, but I will keep your name out of it, if that's the case. Always remember, I don't think there is anything called a stupid question. Just stupid answers. And if you ask me a question, you may very well get a stupid answer. Anyway, until next time, as always, take care, God bless, and bye for now.